Welcome to the Boomer Woman's Podcast. I'm your host, Agnes Knowles. That was then, this is now. Design your own next chapter. Today's guest may well challenge you to design your own next chapter in ways you never imagined. Whoever you were, whoever you think you are, Dave Albin inspires people to truly step from the frying pan onto the fire and find their very best selves. He says what doesn't challenge you does not change you. His enthusiasm is contagious, both for his art and for life. It wasn't always that way, so I'm going to suggest that if he can do it, we can all do it. Listen now. I'm not sure how to introduce my guest today. Dave, he's laughing already. Dave was born in 1954. That makes us pretty much twins. Adopted by his aunt and uncle on his mother's side at the age of 5. They told him they weren't his parents at the age of 11. Later that year, both his adoptive parents started drinking, and this is where Dave's life took a hard turn. He tried alcohol at the age of 11. By the time he was 14, he was experimenting with hard drugs. That was then, and this is now. His present is awe-inspiring, so I'm going to put him on the spot to convince me I should participate if our paths meet in real life. His client list is pretty impressive, but unless he can convince me otherwise, I can't imagine being one of them. You've probably seen something similar to Dave's events on TVs. Maybe you've seen Dave's events on TV, in a movie, made public, maybe in public. Perhaps you've even participated. Curious? Dave Albin, welcome to the Boomer Woman's Podcast.
Thanks, Angus. That was a mouthful. How'd you get through all of that?
Some days are worse than today. Okay. Your company is Firewalk Productions. Firewalking is a 1,000-year-old rite of passage ritual. I heard in one of your videos, you actually said 2,000-year-old rite of passage ritual.
We need to correct that. It's over 1,000 years old that I know of.
Oh, okay.
In my research.
You've fireworked. Oops. I am having problems today, and I even put the right glasses on.
Yes, you did.
You've firewalked hundreds of thousands of people.
I have.
Explain firewalking, please.
Well, I mean, the act itself is, you build a big fire and you use hardwood that's seasoned, and you let it burn for hours and hours and hours, and it renders. And depending on the size of the group that I'm walking, right? If I'm doing a backyard firewalk here at my cabin up in the Appalachian Mountains, I've got a pit, and you put some wood out there and you let it burn for a few hours. And then typically, whether it's a small group or a big group, what you do is you take sod, you take grass, right? It's about 3 feet wide, maybe 15, 18 feet long. And then once those coals render after burning for hours, you just take a shovel and you go in there and you sprinkle them on top of that grass, beat them down a little bit, 1, 2, 3, ready, go. So that's the act. Now, there's a lot of different ways that it's been done over that 1,000 years. If you look at the Phoenicians, if you look at the people of India, it's no joke with them. There's no Latin. No, they're real serious. This is a rite of passage. This is graduations. This is a newborn, a birth. In fact, I got a picture on my website where they actually kind of dug a pit. And so it's probably 15 feet wide, 35 feet long, at least 35 feet long. And standing around the edge are all these people. And they look like family members to me or whoever. And they're dressed in beautiful pastel colors. They're absolutely gorgeous. And then right down in the middle of this pit. Now, I sprinkle coals on grass. That's what you walk on. This is a pit. That means the coals are this thick. And if people that are listening, I'm holding in my hands here, it's 4 or 5 inches thick. And there's this young girl, I'm guessing in her teens, and she's got what looks like a flower in her mouth, and she's holding 2 newborns. And she's in the middle of that pit. And she can't get out. There's no way. Once you're in that middle, you've got to walk out. You drop a child in a pit like that, you'll lose the child. It'll be third-degree burns if it sits there for, long period of time. So when you look at firewalking from that perspective, it changes the whole dynamic. And there's other cultures that do it the same way. People in Portugal, the Spaniards, the Polynesians, the Hawaiians, the Indo-Europeans. The Indo-Europeans actually did it before the men would go into battle. Every night before, they would do their firewalk. And that was the cohesiveness of the team to bring everything together. And, so in the West, it's Tony Robbins, obviously, right? Tony brought firewalking to the West many, many years ago by way of another individual that actually trained him. And once Tony got the training, he brought it into his seminar because he looked at it and said, I don't think there's anything else I can do to change someone's life more grand than that. Because to me, it looks like it's, without a shadow of a doubt, the most life-changing experience any human can go through. And I would agree with it because, again, yeah, I've walked to 500,000 people. I know what it looks like to look at somebody's face, scared to death, apprehension, and just focusing. And that lane is bright red. And then all of a sudden, 4 seconds later, they're jumping up and down and it's extraordinary. They're just screaming and yelling and celebrating unlike anything I've ever seen. So after you see that, tens of thousands of times, you don't have to think about it anymore. It's just a reality. It is what it is. So you said earlier, why would you do that? Yeah, why would you? And I'll tell you why, because fear is kicking your butt. Because fear determines everything you do. Every decision you make is pretty much influenced by fear, right? So it's either face everything and rise or forget everything and run. I know at least it was for me. Up until my first firewalk, almost everything I did was based on fear. Whether I asked the girl to dance or whether I didn't or whatever, it was all fear, 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 fear. So when I got to my first Tony Robbins seminar back in 1995, it had come via that first drink that I took when I was 11 years old, and which escalated into hard drugs, which escalated into bad peer group and hanging with bad people and waking up one morning grossly addicted to heroin, cocaine, and alcohol. So at that point, you hit thresholds. It's like, okay, what are you going to do today? Because I'm not doing this anymore. I can't. I'm just too much physical pain. It's too much emotional pain. What are you going to do? So I was married to a woman, my third wife, had 3 kids. I loved those kids, though they were my stepkids, but I loved them. And when I woke up that morning, I was like, I'm out. I'm done. I'm going to put a bullet in my head. The pain's going to stop. And it was in a moment of compassion where I went, whoa, 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 wait a minute, dude. You can't do that. You put a bullet in your head. Yeah, maybe your troubles are over, but you're going to destroy those 3 kids' lives. I didn't even know what PTSD was. But I do know that the paramedics would be coming in the morgue and the police department and everything else. And those kids would have had to deal with the brunt of that. And so my comment to myself at that moment was, find another way, pal. Okay? You got to do something else. And so the thought I had was, Angus, it was call Alcoholics Anonymous. And what's interesting about that moment is I didn't even know who AA was. I had no idea. I'd never been to AA, didn't know anybody in AA. And yet there's the thought, call Alcoholics Anonymous. Where'd that come from? So I did. And I got this beautiful soul on the phone, and I've nicknamed her Madge. And the reason I did is because she talked like this, right? She probably smoked 2 packs of Pall Mall non-filters a day. She had a really crusty voice. And I'll tell you what, she was a badass. She was a gatekeeper. That was her job. Her job was to interview you, talk to you, and see what action she was going to take. And if she thought you needed it and you do what you were supposed to do, she'd have somebody come pick you up. And so she had to do her job. Well, I must have passed the test because she sent a man to come pick me up. And so that was on June 8th, 1988. One day, 4 meetings, right? And after our, during that meeting, they gave me one of these. They gave me a little chip here that said 24 hours. And on the back, it said, to thy own self be true. And that one day turned into 2, turned into a week, turned into a month, got another chip, 2 months, got another one, 3 months, got another chip, 6 months, got another chip, 9 months, got a chip, and then 1 year. And then you get one every year that you stay sober thereafter. So here in 2023, I just picked up one for 35 years. Well, here's what happened. During my recovery, I'm learning about the steps and the traditions and how to get my life back in order and how to make amends with people and really just how to clean things up. Well, I had insomnia because I was up late at night all the time. And so there I was one night early on, 1988. There he is, Mr. Enthusiasm. You know, a young, vibrant Tony Robbins was selling his program, Personal Power. And you know what, Angus? I couldn't stand him. I thought, what an ass. He's all motivated and, you know, he's real encouraging. But I'll tell you what, he said a couple of things that got me. The one thing he said was, we'll do more to avoid pain than we will to gain pleasure. And I went, what? That's why I drank and used drugs. I was either trying to get some pleasure or I was running from pain. So he nailed me. And then the other thing he said that got me was the way we make decisions, what influences us is we're motivated out of inspiration or desperation. I went, well, okay, Tony, I'm pretty desperate. Maybe I should listen to what this guy's got to teach me. So I bought his program. Came in this big old box, and it was a 30-day program. And it came on these little white things called cassette tapes. Now, I know many of your viewers and listeners are going to have no clue what the heck that one of those are, right? That's how we did. That's how we passed around information back in the day. 8-track tapes.
This is the
reel to reel.
Boomer Woman's podcast. We all still have some.
They're going, are you kidding, Dave? I was listening to a cassette tape this morning. Beautiful. I love it. So anyway, there it was. And what happened there is one of my buddies in AA, and unfortunately, I just lost my buddy Dan here about 2 weeks ago. I loaned him the program. He's like, dude, what's going on with you? You're real motivated. You're all inspiring. What are you doing? I said, well, I've been listening to this guy named Tony Robbins. And he goes, hey, I know who Tony is. I bought his book. He goes, but I never read it. And I said, how classic, right? I said, well, look, man, I'll loan you this program, but you got to promise me you'll go through it. He said, I promise. So he did. Well, heck, 7 years later, guess who calls me on the phone? It's Dan. Hey, man, Tony Robbins is coming to town. You're going with me. And he wasn't even asking me. He was like telling me. He's like, you got me into this. You're going with me. We're going to go see this guy. Are you available on such and such a date? I said, yeah. He goes, I'll call you back. Calls me back an hour later. He goes, done. We pick up the tickets at will call. Here's what they told us to do. Drink a lot of water. You need to hydrate. Bring snacks. You're going to spend a lot of time in the room, which is just an understatement. I'm laughing. If anybody's ever been to a Tony Robbins seminar that's listening, they know why I'm laughing. They said, bring a good attitude and be ready to play full out. I said, Dan, how much was the ticket? I'm going to pay for my own ticket. He said it was $695. This is in 1995. What is that worth today? Like
At a zero.
I was going to say like 1.3 million or whatever, right? And so he's getting off the phone. He goes, oh, wait, hey, I forgot to tell you, man, most important part, we're going to be doing a firewalk. And I remember thinking, well, maybe you are, pal, but I'm sure as hell not. And what's interesting about that, Angus, I didn't even know what a firewalk was. I don't know what that means, but fire and walk didn't sound like anything that I wanted to do. And fear again, here it is, forget everything and run. I'm not doing it. Well, the big day comes. We get there. 2:00 in the afternoon, Tony takes the stage. 10 hours later, I'm in a room for 10 hours with this dude. Remember, bring snacks or you'll starve to death? Tony goes, it's after midnight, by the way. And Tony goes, take your shoes off. And I went, oh, no. I see where you're going with that, pal. You're not fooling me. I'm not doing that. Well, here's the problem. I'm in a room with 3,500 people. Guess what they're doing? They're taking their shoes off. So now what am I going to do? Not take my shoes off? Everybody out there, I go out, sees I got my shoes. I'm a coward. Nah, we ain't going to do that. So I just cut a deal with myself. Take your shoes off, get out there and go hide in the back and lose Dan on the way. And that's exactly what I did. Well, it gets a little worse because when he gets everybody going out there, he gets everybody to start chanting. 3,500 people walking out there going, yes, 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 right? Gets worse because when you get out there in this big giant parking lot where they're going to firewalk 3,500 people, he's got African drummers. Dun, 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 dun. It's like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. what a dog and pony show this is. So anyway, I'm holding true to my plan. I'm going to hide in the back. Well, again, Tony knows this is one of the most life-changing experiences any human will go through, and he doesn't want you to not do it. He also knows there's people like me, lots of them. So what's he do? He trains people to come find us. There I am, minding my own business. I'm out there in the back. Here comes this guy out of nowhere. To this day, I don't know who this guy is. Don't. Here's all I know, though. This guy changed my life. Because as he comes at me, he gets close to me, and he looks at me kind of funny, right? Like a dog that hears a funny noise. He goes, "Hey, man, are you okay?" And when we're not okay, what do? We lie. I'm fine. I'm good. All good here, pal. Nothing to see here. Move along, right?
Except your voice has gone up. How far? I'm fine.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so I'm telling him, then he comes back after that. He goes, "Well, hey, man, you going to walk tonight?" And I said, "Absolutely not. Like, what do you think I'm hiding in the back for?" I didn't say that, but I mean, I'm thinking that. Like, you idiot. What's wrong with you? And he's like, "Hey, man, listen, it's cool. No problem. We don't want you to do anything you don't want to do." And I thought, okay, well, then this guy's going to get me out of here. No, he's not. He set me up. Because the next question he asked me changed my whole life. He said, "Well, wouldn't you at least like to watch?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. I'd love to." Now, right in that moment, I got 3,500 people standing in front of me. I can't see anything. Oh, I can hear it. They got a giant fire over here in the corner. It's huge. That pit's probably 70 feet long. It's probably 30 feet wide. They've been building, they threw cords and cords and cords and cords of wood on it. So it renders. So it's this big giant pile of blue coals. It's gorgeous. Well, how do you walk 3,500 people? You take wheelbarrows over to that big pit. You load those coals in a wheelbarrow. You bring a wheelbarrow in and you run 2 lanes of sod on each side, 3 feet wide, 15, 18 feet long. They call it a fire lane. Then, as I said, you take that shovel, you sprinkle those coals onto that lane. Boom, that's what you walk on. Well, again, I'm in the back. I said, "Wouldn't you like to watch?" And I said, "Sure." He goes, "Well, listen, man, you can't see anything from here." He said, "Just get in line." I took the bait. I'm like, "Okay, I'll do that." So I did. I just got in line, and I'm kind of trudging through 3,500 people. And, at this point, people are already firewalking. And when they get to the celebration and they're jumping up and down and they're screaming, it's exhilaration. The drums are going. People are clapping still and chanting. I mean, it's I don't know. I've never experienced anything like it in my life other than a Robbins event. And so I'm kind of walking along, right? And this guy walks up to me and he kind of quietly whispers in my ear. He goes, "He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go." And pew, he just disappeared into the night. I'm like, who the hell was that? What was that about? What? So I'm kind of walking along, and I finally got to a point where I could see it at an angle. Couldn't see in front of me, but I could see it at an angle, and they're doing it. They're walking. Every race, every creed, every color, they're doing it. And I'm like out of my mind. And I'm kind of walking along, and boom, guess the next thing I know, guess where I am? I'm at the front of the line. And now I'm staring down at that fire lane, right? Again, 3 feet wide, 18 feet long. The coals, Agnes, are bright red. There's no question if they're hot. The wheelbarrow's right there too. You can feel the heat, right? I mean, big time. My heart is beating so hard, I'm pretty sure it's going to jump out of my chest any moment. Well, there's a trainer standing right there. And he's looking at me, and all of a sudden he goes, "Eyes up." And I pulled my eyes up like, "You idiot. Were you not in a room with 10 hours with Tony Robbins? Did you not listen to anything he taught you? Don't stare at what you fear. Keep your eyes up." So now my eyes are up, and he went, "Squeeze your fist and say yes." And I went, "Yes." And he went, "Stronger." And I went, "Yes." And so he could tell. There was no doubt. I was not in a peak state. I was leaving a lot on the table, and he knew it. So he screams at me, "Stronger." And I threw my hands in the air and I screamed as loud as I could. And he goes, "Go, go, go." I took off. Remember the guy? He knows when you're ready. When he says go, you go. I went. Well, here's the first thing I learned about firewalking. When you take the first step, oh, you'll take the second, third, fourth, and fifth. I promise you, right? Well, Tony positions two guys at the end, and they stop you. They catch you, and they're like, "Stop! Wipe your feet and celebrate." And I'm celebrating, jumping up and down, and I'm wiping my feet. And all of a sudden, it dawns on me:
Just
I burnt myself really bad. And I look at my foot, and it's dirty, but there's no burns. Oh, it's my other foot. Nope, it's dirty too, but there's no burns. And now I'm looking back at those red coals, and they kind of move you out of the way so somebody can come behind you. And I'm jumping up and down like a little kid. I had never felt so proud of myself, like my self-belief, my self-confidence, my self-worth. It just rised, right? That frequency you just raised with it. And you've done it with 3,500 people. So now it's a collective energy, and it's phenomenal. In fact, I'm like, where's the bus? Come on, guys, let's go. Let's go climb Mount Everest. I mean, here we go. And that's how you feel in that moment. And so again, there you go. That's why Tony uses it. Well, here's where it got interesting. Here's why I'm on your podcast tonight is the next day. That event of Tony's is a 4-day event. So that was day one, the evening of. Now we're into day two. 3,500 people in the foyer the next morning getting ready to go into the venue. I've never witnessed anything like it in my life. I've never seen people, complete strangers, hanging on each other and loving on each other and connecting with each other and laughing and crying and pouring their emotions, talking about the Firewalk, talking about one of the most life-changing things they've ever done. Boom, 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 boom. And again, that happens at every event. In fact, he was just in Dallas here a couple of weeks ago. I got invited. I went. Same thing. Next morning. That's what happens. Not one bit of it's changed. And so I met one of Tony's trainers. And when I met Ted, I was just talking to him, and I made a comment like, "Hey, man, this must be awesome to be in this positive environment like this." He goes, "Oh, yeah, absolutely." He says, "I'll tell you what. You see those people standing over there with the black shirts and the red writing on the back?" "Yeah." He goes, "Dude, they're volunteers. You want to be part of this? When you go home, call Robbins Research, tell them you want a volunteer crew application. They'll send you one. And who knows? Maybe you'll get selected." Well, I did it. 9 weeks after that happened, I got a letter in the mail that said, "Dave Albin, congratulations. You've been selected to crew with the Anthony Robbins Company." Well, color my ass happy. Look at me. I'm the next thing I know, there I am crewing for Tony Robbins. Well, they look at your background. They look at who you are, what your skills are, and so on. And because I had a military background, I had a security background, I lived on a farm, I knew how to use a log splitter, I knew how to split wood, I knew tools, all that, right? They put me on the fire team. They also put me on the security team to help take care of Tony's celebrities. So I crewed like volunteer. Now you pay in your own way, by the way, right? You're spending $1,500 to $2,000 every time you crew, right? Got to pay your airfare, your hotel, your travel, all that, right? So I did that 5 or 6 times, and then they offered me a job as a subcontractor, which I will tell you that my kid's mother, my wife at the time, was very pleased about. So anyway, she wasn't real thrilled with me spending a couple $1,000. Like, who's this Tony Robbins guy? Why are you spending all? She didn't know. She had no references. So it was cool when they made me a subcontractor. Guess what they did? They gave me a free ticket. And so I got to take her. And so I took her, and she went to the Firewalk. And after she graduated, we were walking on the beach. She goes, "Okay, I get it. I drank the Kool-Aid. I'm good. I'm in. You want to run with this guy? Run with him. Go. I support you 100%. So once I became a subcontractor in 96, 97, when 2003 rolled around, Tony asked me to take over all of his Firewalks globally. So that was a magical moment. He also paid to have my kids travel with us because I homeschooled. So now here's my family on the road with Tony Robbins, right? Which is some kind of dream. It's almost like a fairy tale. 2005, Tony and I and the rest of the crew went to London. We went to the Docklands at the Excel Center, and we set the world record. We firewalked 12,300 people. And then in 2014, I'll move this forward. I'm driving down the road, my phone rings. Guess who it is? This company called Google. Hi, you Dave Albin? Yeah. You the Dave Albin does the Firewalks for Tony Robbins? Yeah. we'd like to talk to you about hiring you if you're not under any contractual obligation or non-compete. Okay. Well, homeboy's a free agent. What you got? And so the next thing I know, I'm being hired by Google. And that's when the light bulb went off. That's when I realized, not only in talking to Google, they basically told me, they said, you ought to consider starting your own business. There's a huge marketplace in corporate America for you. They're looking for paradigm shift experiences because, they know what doesn't challenge you, doesn't change you. You can put a great speaker, motivational speaker on stage, but that doesn't mean they're going to change your life. Go outside and walk on fire. You can change your life in 4 seconds. And then right after that, Angus, after I retired from TR's organization, after Google, I went to NASA. And then I went to Notre Dame, and then Chick-fil-A and Virginia Tech and Remax and Heineken. And now I'm on your podcast. I mean, you just never know, right? So
there you go. Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to thank you for, I have 4 pages of notes here and I don't need any of them. You've just been taking care of everything, all the questions. I do need to ask you one thing is when you do the voice of Madge, did you ever co-star with Danny DeVito in the movie Throw Mama from the Train?
No. I met Danny DeVito, interesting enough, but no, I have not seen
the movie. No. His mother's voice is very similar.
Oh, she talks like that, does she? I love it.
Sorry,
but she did. Madge, and I don't know their name is Madge. I just affectionately nicknamed her. Yeah, that woman saved my life. I have a great, deep love and admiration for her. But she was mean, man. She was like screaming at me and yelling at me. And are you sure you want to get sober? Well, I'm not going to send anybody over to your house if you're not serious. I mean, again, she was the gatekeeper. She had a job to do.
Yeah.
Bless her heart.
Okay, so what a path. You answered everything. So I was going to ask you how you went from that place of putting a gun to your head to Tony Robbins. And now you've moved on. You have your own company.
I have. That happened in 2014.
Now, some of my questions are still the doubting Thomas in me, the doubting Agnes in me. Do you need huge insurance policies?
No.
Okay.
Why? Because it's not dangerous. It sounds dangerous. It might even look a little dangerous. Mm-hmm. It's not. I've walked 500,000 people. Guess how many of them had to go to the hospital? 0. How many of them had to be hospitalized? 0. The worst case scenario is you get a little blister on your foot. You put a little Neosporin on it. There's another way that we can show you how to treat it. And the next day, it's probably gone. There's your worst case scenario.
Do you know why?
You want to talk about because again, it's you're walking. You're not standing. And by the way, I do fire standing in my advanced firewalk training. Okay, so I understand that. The bottom line is that when you put your foot down on that coal, what are you taking away from it? Oxygen. So it can't breathe, right? So it starts to cool immediately, and you're not on it. You're only on it for a split second. And so you boom, 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 boom. And again, the coals, I get asked all the time. It's kind of a funny question if you think about it. Hey, it's a firewalk. Can I get burned? The coals are 1,000 degrees. What's the answer? I got called to a corporate meeting one time. There was a company in Arizona wanted to hire me, and they brought me out there, and they wanted to put me in front of the company, and so I did. And so I'm sitting in the boardroom, and the CEO starts the meeting, and he goes, "All right, guys. Well, as you know, we brought in Dave Albin. He's the Firewalk guy. We have about 350 of our sales and marketing people, and who wants to ask some questions?" And the corporate attorney, sitting 4 seats away from me, goes, "I got a question." He must have been Madge's uncle. He said, "How many of our people are going to get burnt?" And I said, "Well, that's a fair question. Now, I need to ask 2 questions to properly answer that. Number 1, how many of you here in this room have ever taken your family to a beach, to a lake, or to a pool and got your family sunburned? How many of you have done that besides all of you? By the way, how many of you have ever taken your kids back or your family back and did it a second time? I got news for you. That's 100 times more dangerous than any firewalk you're going to ever have with me." And the CEO, without even breaking rank, man, he just went, he goes, "Oh, Mr. Albin," he goes, I think we probably made a big mistake in bringing you here. I'm really sorry." He turns to a COO who's sitting right there, and he goes, "Look, if this guy's good enough for Google and he's good enough for Tony Robbins, he's good enough for us. Booking. Let's go to lunch." Okay, fair enough. It's really not that dangerous.
So the reason people are so exhilarated and so high when they finish is because their brain has still acknowledged the fact that 1,000 degrees you're going to torch your feet off, but
Right.
they get to the end of it unscathed because of pure physics or whatever it's called.
Let me put a disclaimer in here. Can you get burned? You better believe you can. Could you get hurt really bad? You better believe you can. So you better make darn sure your facilitator knows what they're doing. Because there's a lot of things that I do that make sure that the firewalk is safe. Don't want you to fall. That's a big one. Here's what I want. My job is to create one of the top 10 experiences of your life. Period. And then when it's all done, we're going to give you a little container. And it's going to have the coals from the Firewalk. It's going to say, I Firewalked in 2023. And then, I do a bunch of other stuff too. Part of the Firewalk experience, I do the board break experience as well. So it's a martial arts. Most people know how do you break a board. You go into any dojo in America, martial arts studio. They break boards all the time. That's when you graduate, right? You go from one belt to another belt, you do a board break. Well, I fancied it up. I have them write something on the front of the board they want to move towards. I have them write something on the back of the board that they want to move away from. And then I have them write anybody's name on the board that they've lost. And then I also, to create the rite of passage, I have them write anybody's name on the board they write anybody's name on the board they're in conflict with, right? So if forgiveness or reconciliation is part of that relationship, it ends tonight. Stop carrying around resentment for another human being. That's just stupid. So they write their name on the board, and then again, I have them write somebody's name on the board that they've lost. That creates the rite of passage. Take them outside. We have our board break stations. Boom, they break the board. We walk them in a circle. They firewalk. They come back, and they get to throw their board into the fire. So now it's a double whammy. And then while we're out there, I have a proprietary process that I do immediately following the firewalk to do two things. Number one, to anchor it in deeply. And then they'll know how, if they want to get that feeling again, we show them exactly how to do it. We anchor it in for them. And then we calibrate everybody's heart. So we take 200 people, right, of a company, and the next thing you know, right after the firewalk, all their hearts are beating at the same time. Kaboom. And then it's like, good night. On your way out, don't forget to pick up your coals. and then I'm done. Corporate America, I typically offer a package deal too. So I give them a kind of a 2-for-1. I'm like, look, however you want to do this, we can come in, do the board break and the firewalk on your first event, and then I'll come back and work with them again. And we do the glass walk and the arrow break. The arrow break's where you put an arrow here in your neck. You put it up against the wall. 3, 2, 1, you step through it and you break it. That's scary. Right? Because there's an illusion. What happens if that arrow pierces my trachea? Well, you're going to have a bad day. Now, I will tell you that pounds per square inch, it's not going to happen, right? It would take about 125 pounds per square inch to push through this part of your throat. It takes about 24 pounds per square inch to step through and break it. And then they do the glass walk experience, which is pretty powerful as well, because that's pretty scary, because we've all cut ourselves. So we combine those two experiences in two, and then that way I can come in and, facilitate two really powerful back-to-back events. Typically, I like them to book it within a year. That's why I give them the package deal, and then that way we can come back and build off the first event. That they can do the glass walk and the arrow break first, and then we come back and do the firewalk board break. However they want to do it, doesn't matter to me. But it just builds off the first event.
Now, one question I'm going to ask, just because it's been part of your life and it's certainly a part of corporate culture in some areas. You talked about being in Tony Robbins' thing for 10 hours. If you're in there drinking water, you're probably in fairly decent shape. Corporate getaways are often renowned for their drinking, and you do not want people falling down in those coals. Is there some way to monitor that people have not been into the alcohol or whatever?
We typically, with corporations or businesses, Like I have two big events coming up here in January. One of them is called the EO organization. And the EO is the Entrepreneurs Organization. I've done like a dozen events for these guys. And there's chapters all over the world. And so this just happens to be, this chapter of South Florida. So, when I'm sitting down with the event team, we talk about that. Hey, Dave, we want to do cocktails. We want to do this. I said, fine. Then give them a ticket, and they can have one drink in an hour. That's it. Then we'll do the firewalk. And then after that, whatever you're going to do, then they can party like rock stars. But one drink, that's it. And then that way we're okay. And they can have that drink, prior to me taking the stage. Once I take the stage, it's going to be an hour and, 20 minutes, whatever, hour and a half, by the time I actually take them outside, do the board break, and walk them across the fire. So, yeah, I tell people, look, that's a liability. So, no drinking before the firewalk. I have them put it out there to everybody, tell them, no drinking within 24 hours of the firewalk. And if you can't do that, well, then you maybe want to talk to me about that problem.
Now, do you set these people off? Like, are you, take this in the vein in which it's meant, are you the Tony Robbins where you're there and are you ready? Are you up?
Yep.
So
I walk them all. Now, I have some very incredible trainers that have come to my academy. I've trained them. I have the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy. I do it once a year. We just did it in October. The next one's in October 2024. And they come to me and I teach them how to do all of it. So if they have a corporation, they want to send somebody from the HR department, or a business owner wants to come, or an entrepreneur, or trainers, or coaches, or whatever, they can come to the Dave Albin Firewalk Academy, and then I certify them at the end. Now, I do have people that have been working with me for over 2 decades. So a lot of times they're there and they've walked thousands of people as well. So they know exactly what to do.
It's a well-oiled machine. Okay. I'm exhausted and I'm only the interviewer. What haven't we talked about? What haven't you told us, whatever, that you want midlife people, in this case, mostly women, to think about as they consider their next chapters?
Well, again, do the things that are hard in life and life will become easy. Do the things that are easy and life's going to become hard. I get asked all the time about my ritual. What's the first thing I do when I get up? I make my bed. The second thing I do is I go out and I stand for about 10 minutes in the morning sunlight. And from my torso up, that sunlight is extremely important. Super, incredibly good for you, especially with vitamin D. Once I do that, I'm also at the same time, while I'm standing there in the sun, in my skivvies, I'm doing deep diaphragmatic breathing. So I'm doing 3 sets of 30 breaths. And a breath looks something like this. So I'm influxing a tremendous amount of oxygen into my body. Why do you do that, Dave? Well, it's pretty obvious. Here's what I know. Disease and sickness, including cancer, cannot survive in an oxygenated environment. How much does it cost to breathe like that, Dave? Nothing. So I'm 70. Guess how many medications I'm on? None. Okay, so yeah, I know. We've gotten away from this. That's why it's such a rite of passage. We've got away. The people that walked this planet 100 years ago, they did that, especially the indigenous people. They were in the morning sunlight all the time. They were exposing themselves to it. The second thing I do is I go over on the other side of my cabin and I do grounding. I put my feet on Mother Earth. And I won't go into grounding and earthing here. It's too much of a long topic. Just go Google it and find out why it's so good for you. It's pretty obvious. It's scientific. They've run all kinds of studies on it. It's not if it's going to help you, it will help you. And then from then I come in and I do my meditations and I do my sound therapy. And then I go take my shower. And I do a really hot shower like most people do. And then I live up here in the mountains. The cold water at my house here is 57 degrees. It's cold. So as soon as I do my hot shower, I turn it off. I set a timer for 3 minutes. I turn the cold water on and I have it hit me right here in the face. And it will literally take your breath away. Literally, it's going to knock your breath right out of you. And so I stand there for 3 minutes in that cold water. Again, I'm not going to go into the scientific. Most people know that Olympians and athletes do it all the time to help recover with inflammation and all that. I do it every day. It's part of my regimen. Do I like it? No. Do I want to do it? No. Do I try to talk myself out of it sometimes? Yes. And that's the point I want to make. You want to live an extraordinary life? Stop negotiating with yourself. So I believe the two most important times in someone's life is the moment they're born and the moment they figure out why. So I know my calling. I know what's going on. And I'll get into something that just happened to me on a podcast. The other thing is I've always heard, one of my mentors told me, and I've never forgot this. He said, Dave, just know this. Every human on this planet has 2 lives. And the second one starts when you realize you have only one. So I'm on a podcast a couple of months ago. And after we finished recording, we were just kind of talking. And Natalia asked me, she said, Dave, have you ever done a firewalk for veterans? And I said, you mean specifically? And she said, yeah. I go, no, I haven't. I go, why? What's going on? She goes, I have 300 vets coming to a gala down in Florida. And she goes, how much do you charge? And I told her. She goes, oh. She goes, we can't afford you. And I went, whoa, wait a minute. Hold on a second. What if I did it pro bono? Look, here's what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to ask my team to work for free. You're going to have to pay for the supplies. You have to pay for the permits. You'll have to pay for my team and feed them and put them in an Airbnb and all that. My fee, which is what the most expensive part of the whole process is, I won't charge you. Well, she said, she started crying. So that night when I went to bed, I woke up in the middle of the night, and here's the thought that came to me. Operation Do No Harm. When we were talking, she said, you realize that 22 vets a day are taking their own life. She goes, but that number's not correct because that's only if they leave a note. It's closer to 40 a day. I'm a vet. My father that raised me was a vet. I grew up. All my buddies, many of my buddies are vets. Vietnam, all of it. And so then after thinking about vets, I said, well, there's a couple of other categories here that I could spend the rest of my life, how much time I've got left, supporting all 4 of these categories. Category 1, veterans. Category 2, first responders. They also have a high rate of taking their own lives. Single moms and kids that have been bullied. Why single moms? 2 months before I was born, my biological father, who had hurt himself, they put a plate in his head to save his life, complained all the time that the pain was excruciating. Told my mom all the time, I don't know how much longer I can take it. 2 months before I'm born, my dad turned to my mom and said, I'm going to the grocery store. We never saw or heard from him again. So when I was born to a single mom. She already had 2 boys. I'm the third one. We had another cousin living with us and my grandmother living in a 1-bedroom apartment in Hollywood, California. Mom came from what I believe the most incredible generation that's ever walked the planet. The generation that came through the Depression, the generation that fought World War II. Because what a lot of people don't take a stop and realize, I hate this stuff all the time where they go, like women have to prove themselves. So I'm like, are you kidding me? You're out of your mind. While the men were off fighting the war in World War II, guess what the women were doing? Everything. So I don't want to hear that crap. They were building tanks and Jeeps. My mother was known as Rosie the Riveter. She worked for McDonnell Douglas. She was driving rivets into the wings and building airplanes for the war. So single moms have a really, special place in my heart. She was working at the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood. Great hotel. She was doing good. She had a good job. She couldn't feed 6 people, though. So when I was 5, she went to her oldest sister and said, Pat, will you and your husband, Bob, adopt David? And they did. So when I hire people, I try to hire a single mom for a lot of reasons. 1, because I come from that. Number 2, I haven't found anybody that'll work harder than a single mom.
Nobody knows how to work as hard as a single mom.
Right? Because failure is not an option. The girl that does my website and cleans my house and a lot of my administrative stuff, they're all single moms. And I love them. And I treat them like they're incredible humans because they are. And they got to figure out a way. And they get up every day and they got to get up and kill the rabbit, like I like to say. So there's my category. So what does that mean? All right, corporate America, if you're listening, I need your help. You want to put your brand out in front of something absolutely spectacular? You want to save some vets and first responders, some kids and some moms? Come talk to me. I'd love to have you. We need you.
And I will add that the women that I know through life and the podcast and everything else, we all know so many people. So
sweet. Well, I'll tell you what I'm looking for right now. If there's anybody out there that knows how to put a 501c3, so I want to create Operation Do No Harm, and I want to create, the foundation around that. And so if there's anybody out there that could come and make that happen for us, I'd love you forever and a little further.
Okay, you're a fast talker. Say that again. 501.
A 501c3. It's a foundation so that when people come and they donate money, the corporation can write it off. So you have to be what's called a 501c3.
And for any listeners that didn't catch it at the very beginning, Dave is in the U.S.
He is.
Yeah.
Of course, I've done events all over the world. However,
I just mean for that particular form, though. It'll be an American form.
Yeah, that would be in America. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good point.
I believe I've seen on your website and around different things that I was doing my research on, you have a saying that what doesn't challenge you doesn't change you.
That's right. It's true. Well, you think think about it. It's how it works.
Yeah.
It doesn't challenge you, doesn't change. How do you become a Navy SEAL? Sitting in a classroom? I don't think so. You become a Navy SEAL by they taking you out into the cold waters off the coast of San Onofre, San Diego, and putting you in there at 3 o'clock in the morning, pitch black, you can't see anything. And the only thing you know is your instructor told you there's 9 different types of killer sharks in that water. That builds character. So the comfort zones suck because everything you ever wanted is right over there, sitting right over there on the other side of fear in your comfort zone. So you step up. You're here. You're made for greatness. We all are. We're all designed for greatness. And I'll prove it to anybody. I don't, bring your excuses, bring your crap to me. You're not going to get far with me. You're just not, because I'm not going to let you go there. You can tell yourself all that you all want, but I'm not buying into it. When I do my seminars, Angus, there's a picture of a guy on the screen behind me, right? And you can pretty much tell where this guy is standing. So I'll be talking for 20 minutes, and then I'll go to the audience and I'll say, hey, anybody here tell me where my buddy Nick is standing here? And they'll say, yeah, Mount Everest. And I'll say, well, you're correct. And here's what I want you to know. That man right there climbed the 7 highest mountains on 7 continents. You got that? 7 continents, the 7 highest mountains, including Everest. He climbed all 7 of them. But there's something very interesting about Eric that I want to point out. Anybody here know what it is? They don't know. I'll go, here's what it is. He's blind. Okay? So shut up. I don't want to hear it. If a blind man can climb the 7 highest mountains on earth, what can you do? Because he can ride a mountain bike too. He can kayak too. So, I think Viktor Frankl probably left us the greatest bit of evidence about what a human can do if they put their mind to it. Viktor Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning. And if you don't know, he was in Auschwitz. And they assassinated his family, and they took everything from you. They take everything. You're standing outside in the cold naked. You haven't eaten in 4 days. And every single day, you don't know whether you're going to go to the chamber that day. You're living with that 24/7, every single day. But Viktor figured something out. And what he figured out was there's one thing. You can take my clothes. You can't feed me. You can beat me. You can do all this. But there's one thing you cannot take from me. I have to give it to you. And what is it? My attitude. I've got to give that up. And so he developed that. He said, that's my ticket. So he developed purpose. because he said, someone has to tell this story. It's so atrocious. It's beyond anything you could ever imagine. Somebody has to get out of here and tell this story. And that's what got him out. Now, if you're going to read his book, I'm going to warn you, it's not a fun read at all, but man, is it enlightening. So, ladies, step into your greatness. Because, a lot of women don't want to be vulnerable. They don't want to get up and tell their story because they did this or they did that or whatever. And I find there's great strength in that. I've got a dear friend of mine, Angela Stilwell. She's made a whole, she's out on tour talking and teaching women how to do all that. It's incredible. And she was just brutally, her mother was killed in front of her. Her dad was a con artist. They went from hotel to hotel to hotel. Her life was just a train wreck. And she took all that stuff and she turned it into a story. She created a story, an empowering story. Because here's the bottom line. Every single thing that happens to us, I don't care what it is, we create a story. All of it. Now, we get to choose what kind of a story do you want to create? You want to create one that's powerful, that empowers you, and that can help others? Or do you want to create a story that you embellish and it disempowers you? So, again, it doesn't matter what happens to you. Yes, what does matter is how you react to it. What does matter is the story you create around it. And I see that with a lot of women and men too. Don't get me wrong. I see it a little bit more in women though. And I love, I'll tell you the one experience that I facilitate that gets women a lot is that arrow break. They don't like it. They put that thing in their neck, and as they start to push through it, it pushes back and it hurts. And if they've ever been attacked or if they've had any bad things happen in that regard, I don't want to get deep there, but if their neck has had anything to do with it, like they've been grabbed or whatever, oh, that's a scary experience. But let me tell you something. You step through that arrow and you break through that, it is liberating. It is phenomenal. So, in fact, a couple of years ago, I did a big event here right in my own little town. It was called the Women's Empowerment Group. And there were 40 of them. And man, we had a freaking blast. And they did it all, man. They did the firewalk, the board break, the arrow break, and the glass walk. And then we did a lot of other things as well. It was like a 3.5-day event.
Yeah.
So
I had a career in elder care, and especially that older generation, your mother, my mother,
right.
They mostly felt that the man was the head of the family, so their story didn't matter. But when you managed to find that story, when you managed to have them tell some of that story, it was amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing.
Well, because I'll be the first to jump to every woman's aid and say that's absolute total freaking bullshit. I look at the mother that raised me and the one that gave birth to me. The mother that raised me, holy crap. Pat Albin she was a badass, man. She taught me how to do everything. She taught me how to cook, how to sew, how to clean properly, how to do the laundry. Just everything. It's funny because when I was a kid, I was an entrepreneur. I had a paper route, so I used to deliver papers, and that you run your own business when you're a paper route, a paper boy. And then I worked across the street from I lived across the street from a golf course. And the thing I learned about golfers is they suck. So I would go over there, I'd ride my bike, right? And I'd find golf balls on the outside of the fence around the golf course. They were everywhere. I'd take them back home. I'd clean them up. I'd go back to the golf course, and the boxes, the balls would come in that they'd sell them. They'd throw them away. Well, I'd take them and take all the balls that I found, and I'd clean them and line them up. Titleist, Maxfly, Royal, Dunlop, right? And then I went back into the parking lot and sold them back to the golfers. Golfers loved it. Some of them loved me. Some of them hated me. The entrepreneurs loved me, right? But here's where Mom came in. Mom grew beautiful flowers. She'd grow anything. She was a product of their depression. She knew how to grow food, right? So flowers were really important for the pollination around their garden. And so she had nice big backyard where she grew all these flowers. And so she would cut them and arrange them. And she had an eye for color. They were gorgeous. And then she would cut the flower, Angus, at an angle, right? Not at the bottom, but at an angle. And I said, Mom, why do you do that? And she goes, because more water will get into the flower. Okay. So then she put a rubber band or a twist tie around them. And then she put them in a bucket, send me outside with like 10, arrangements. And she would put a little bit of 7-Up into the water. Why did she do that? Because that 7-Up, that sugar would get into that flower and it would outlast the florist 2-1. You literally buy your flowers from a kid on the street whose flowers would outlast any florist 2-1.
There you go.
So, right. So there I was. But that's mom. My mom taught me how to date. Oh, yeah. She told me what to do, what not to do. She told me the setup. She said, do you realize that girl has spent all day thinking about you and that date? She's got her special dress. She's been with her mom probably and getting their hair done and doing their makeup and working for hours just so that first glimpse of her when I showed up. She goes, look, let me tell you how to handle that. And so she said, number one, you need to be 5 minutes early. Minimum. I prefer 10, but don't go to the door until, it's almost time. But be 5 minutes early. Why? Because that girl you're dating is looking out that window watching for you. I'm like, okay. Right. All right, mom. If you say so. She said, by the way, when you go up to that door, you knock on the door. You don't ever ring the doorbell. And you knock like this. Okay. She goes, there's a reason. Just trust me. And whoever answers the door, mom or dad, you put your hand out, you introduce who you are, and that you're there to pick up their daughter. And when you shake their hand, grip their hand. I don't mean try to hurt it, but grip it. If they grip yours hard, you grip it hard. And then you thank them for allowing them to go out with their daughter. And then you turn to which one's there and you say, what time would you like me to have your daughter home? We'd like her at home at 10:30. I'll have her here and bring her back early. Don't bring her back at 10:35 because the parents are watching. They're watching everything you do, pal. Young man, as my mom would say, right? And when you get in the car, you tell her she smells good, she looks great. And somewhere in the night, tell her compliment her shoes. What? Trust me. Tell her you're like her shoes. And when you're all done with the date, you walk her back to the door that night, don't you even think about kissing her. Don't do it. If you want to go out with her again, you tell her that you had an incredible time. You shake her hand and that you would love the opportunity to take her out on another date. If you don't want to take her out on a date, don't say that to her. Just tell her that you had a really wonderful time and thank you. That's it. And then when you go on the second date, watch what happens. The parents are going to love you. Hey, Dave, come on in. You know what I mean? They loved it. How many times do we get to make a first impression? One, right? And she said, and by the way, on the second date, don't kiss her then either. And she said, and by the time you get to the third date, you're not going to have a choice in the matter.
Dear.
Right? Come on.
I'm going to have my grandson listen to the last 10 minutes of this. This is great. I mean, you can listen to the whole thing, but this is really important. Okay, I don't want to be a clock watcher, but I'm going to be a clock watcher. However, that said, before I close, we just got light with the date stuff, but we have had some serious discussion here. Can I ask you a personal question on a slightly lighter note?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's with Elf on the Shelf?
What's with Elf on the Shelf? Well, it started, I don't know, years ago, and I started doing funny things with it. And the next thing I know, all my friends and family are like, they're either yelling at me about it or they're loving it, and and they're starting to send me stuff. And so I've been at it now for a while, and it's ridiculous. It is so ridiculous how many people love and wait. I mean, I get compliments. I get stuff like all the time. Oh, it's not Christmas. Christmas doesn't really start until Thanksgiving, until Dave starts with all his Elf on a Shelf nonsense. So, yeah, it's fun.
I had a good time looking through some of your Elf on the Shelf, and I couldn't quite decide if you had done most of them or whether people send them, but they were pretty good.
Yeah, they're cute.
Okay, where do we find you on the World Wide Web?
Just go to our website. It's www.firewalkadventures.com. And once you get there, everything's there. Somebody wants to look at the academy, and come learn how to be a corporate team building extraordinaire, they can do that. I don't have anything up with Operation Do No Harm. Again, we have to build the 501c3. Then once we have that, so people that want to hire or get involved with that, they can make their donations and get the tax write-off. So once we have that in place, my girl will build out the website part of that so people can come and take a peek at that as well. By the way, I will, if I can plug this, we did schedule our first Firewalk specifically for veterans. It's going to be April 13th. It's going to be in Modesto, California. So we're really excited about the Rotary Club there in Modesto, and my buddy Ed, who's the president, and he's sponsoring it. He's bringing us out, and so we're really excited. And we've been inviting some corporate people to that as well.
And you do keynotes as well too, don't you?
I do, but I typically don't do a keynote unless, at least I can take you through some experience. I'm going to challenge you.
Okay.
It's what I'm going to do. I know how it works.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Website link is in the show notes. You've got some social links, and I'll put all the links on your page at our website.
Yeah. Yeah. My social media links are on my website as well. So you can find everything there: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. And that's where I cut it off. I don't do TikTok. I don't do, what's the other one? Whatever it is. I don't do that one either. I do LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram, and that's more than I can handle at this point.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. So,
yeah.
Listeners, if you have thoughts on today's show, you must have thoughts on today's show. Please talk to us. This guest has to inspire thoughts, emotions, even doubt in everyone. Leave comments where you're listening, or if you're listening at the Boomer Woman's podcast at boomwithabang.com, scroll to the bottom of the page and talk to us there. Or what question did I not ask Dave? Ask it in the comments and I'll get you an answer.
Yes, she will.
As usual, leave stars and reviews where you can. They help us grow. Share this episode. I was pretty incredulous when Dave contacted me. However, I've loved talking with him and can't imagine his story, this whole concept, wouldn't fascinate your family and friends. So share away. Dave Albin, thank you so much for being my guest today and being so open about your experiences and fascinating us with what you do.
My pleasure.
Have a great rest of the week.